Knowledge nuggets. Composing test cases. What is a test case? According to the IEEE Standard for Software Test Documentation, a test case is a document specifying inputs, predicted results, and a set of execution conditions for a test item. In other words, it is a document that lists the steps executed to verify or validate a requirement, along with the necessary inputs and expected results. Let's take a look at some of the things that test cases are. They are detailed steps executed to receive an expected outcome. They contain details on what is needed to execute those steps, and they contain the expected results. Test cases could be positive, verifying that something can be done, or they could be negative, verifying that something can't be done. Finally, they are used to verify or validate requirements. Now, let's look at what test cases are not. They are not high level. For this process, that would be defined as a test scenario. They are neither vague nor general. The expected results are clear. So why do we need test cases? Test cases allow us to document the verification, making sure that the product works as designed, or the validation, making sure that the product works as it will be used, of requirements. This is accomplished through the process of breaking down the requirements into test scenarios, then into test cases. This process is known as decomposition. Once the requirements are broken down or decomposed into test scenarios and then into test cases, they are then linked to provide traceability. Traceability is the ability to trace a child test case back to its parent test scenario and/or requirement. This ensures that the requirements are covered during testing and identifies any impacts if those requirements are modified or deleted. What should be included in a test case? That could depend on the product you are testing or the project on which you are working. The contents could differ according to the need, but let's take a look at a basic example of a test case. First, a test case needs a unique identifier. This could be as simple as TC1, or it could include abbreviated information such as the product, release, business area, module, or other information used for filtering. Next, the test case should reference the requirement or requirements being tested. Ideally, this would be done through a link, but it can also simply be the unique identifier for the requirement. A high-level title or label allows the purpose of the test case to be identified quickly. A summary or short description can give additional details on the requirement and scenario being tested. Inputs are identified so that the tester knows what needs to be in place in order to execute the test case. The heart of the test case would be the detailed steps needed to execute it. Then, the expected results need to be specified to ensure that it works. Finally, the actual results or status would be included and entered during execution. In some cases, the status might be a separate document used for metrics. Let's take an example of a requirement and decompose it into a test scenario and then a test case. In this example, we want to provide customers the ability to add their name, address, and phone number to a product so that they can be contacted. We would first decompose the requirement into high-level test scenarios, then use those scenarios to compose test cases. If test scenarios are not being used for your project, you can follow the same steps used to identify them to help you compose your test cases. While following this process, some questions to ask would be, who will be using it? How should it work? How should it not work? What happens when it doesn't work? And are there any other ways it could work? For our example scenario, the who would be a customer. The what would be to add their name, address, and phone number to the system. The why is so that they can be contacted. So we can identify our first scenario as a customer should be able to add their name, address, and phone number to the system. From this scenario, we can identify all possible test cases. In this example, we would verify the ability for a new customer and an existing customer to add a valid name, address, and phone number to the system. Notice that this is a positive scenario. If negative scenarios are not identified in the requirements and/or test scenarios, we can create negative test cases to cover them. For our example test case, we will use a simple unique identifier of TC1. We indicate the requirement being tested, then we add a high-level title or label describing what we are doing in the test case. We need to indicate any necessary inputs so the tester can have them in place before beginning the steps. Then the tester can follow the detailed steps to execute the test case. We need the expected results indicated so that the tester knows whether the test case passed or not. Finally, we have a section to capture the actual results or status either in the test case document itself or a separate execution status document. This is where the tester indicates whether the test case has passed and the requirement has been verified. But what if the test case's actual results don't match the expected results? This is known as a test case failure. It results in the tester composing a document known as a defect, bug, or trouble ticket. This is then assigned to development for investigation of the cause and to correct the issue. But this process will be covered in a separate presentation. During decomposition, it is important for the tester to consider all possible test scenarios and test cases. As mentioned earlier, if there is no requirement or test scenario that covers the possible negative scenarios, in other words, what shouldn't happen, then they need to be covered in the test cases for the positive scenarios. As you decompose the requirements into test scenarios and/or test cases, ensure that they are linked or have references to the requirement or test scenario document's unique identifiers. This allows for traceability. And traceability ensures complete test coverage of the requirements. This has been a Knowledge Nuggets presentation on how to compose test cases. Thank you for your time and for your attention.